trust is not a checklist item, right?
Right.
Trust is building more and more value on your website, more and more nuance.
Mhm.
And it could be argued, I'm just giving away all this information. Google's going to get it from somebody else if it doesn't get it from you. And you could very well have some gated information that you want to keep it for user login, but that subject matter expertise will help fuel Google's trust.
Welcome to the third season of the Simple and Smart SEO Show, the podcast dedicated to empathy-driven, brand-building SEO. I'm your host, Crystal Waddell. I leverage my obsession with user experience to help business owners just like you optimize your website with confidence. Thank you so much for being here. Let's jump into another great episode. Welcome back to the Simple and Smart SEO Show podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Waddell, and I'm super excited to be here with Erin Sparks, who I met at Brighton SEO in San Diego last fall. And I was just so impressed with his video skills, his interpersonal skills, the way he handled Morty, and so many other things. So Erin, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I just figured out what handle I need to actually change on my Twitter account. It's got to be Morty Wrangler. That's what I am. That is my skill. That's my superpower. So with this, I'm going to go change that today. All right.
Yeah.
Very nice to meet you, Crystal. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. So I wanted to just ask you first about your podcast, Edge of the Web. I noticed that you have 600 episodes, over 600 episodes.
We're at 685 or something like that. 687. Yeah, that's crazy.
So how did it get started? And can you tell us just a little bit about what's different now from when you started?
I started my company in 2004, breaking away from a lot of marketing firms I worked with that really didn't get SEO, and they were avoiding SEO at the time because they didn't want to be held accountable. So started my own company, focused on successful strategies for websites. And I soon discovered that we need to be able to educate our clients on what SEO is all about and what factors go into it. I had advertised in the past on radio, a local radio in Indianapolis, Indiana. I said, all right, let's go ahead and grab some time on these radio stations and just have a hour show unpacking, demystifying things, busting myths on digital marketing. And we had a recipe of what we were going through. So we started doing radio show recordings, and then immediately took that MP3 and started building a podcast from that because of the channel that we knew was going to be up and coming. Even the radio show people didn't understand what we were doing because podcast was so new there. But changed a couple radio stations and got into video as well, realizing that shag carpeting on the walls really doesn't work well with video. So we started to figure out our pathway to be able to build a studio that would be able to house the aesthetic that we were looking for with our show. So we were in podcasting, but also video casting at the time. And on top of that, live streaming the show. So we really moved with the nature of the beast and got into some live streaming expertise. All that while using the show to educate ourselves, because SEO and all digital marketing spaces move so quickly. The only way to keep up with things is to be able to almost have a forcing function where if we got to talk about it, we got to learn about it.
Absolutely.
So that's the discipline right there. And when we started doing weekly shows, I think 2011 or 2012, maybe a little bit later, we pivoted from us giving expertise about what we saw in the news and actually starting to reach out to influencers that were around the planet. So we started to really connect with individuals, bring them on, make them feel good, make them look good, unpack their stories, unpack their knowledge. Over the first 5 years, it took us 5 years to get 100,000 downloads. In that first year that we pivoted, we got 100,000 downloads just that year.
Wow.
So the audience really took to that pivot, that change. And from there, we just capitalized on it and then broke apart the show into singular news podcasts as well as the interview podcast, interlacing them together and asking our guests to talk about things maybe that they didn't really have subject matter expertise about. And then we brought on additional influencer that it's not like a bad penny. I picked him up at SMX in 2020 and he stuck around with me. That's Marty Oberstein. He's the head of SEO brand over at Wix. And we have had this camaraderie over the last 3 years, I think. And he's been on the news show while we've been doing the interview, all the while separately. So it morphed into a lot of different efforts. And ultimately, as we learned from all of our mistakes, and we productized our services to be able to produce podcasts. So the studio is here. Anybody in Indianapolis can walk in and record in our studio, but we can also produce anything, anywhere. So Wix actually decided to actually use our services to produce their podcast. And we've had a number of different podcasts as well that we produce. But that's part of our marketing services, is to be able to create that type of content and continuity and imagery for the audio files that are out there. Boy, that was a long road to get there, but that's where we are now.
No, I love it. I always love to hear like where the growth happened. And so it's neat to hear that you made a pivot because you saw a different opportunity, and that's where you really found your audience.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think that's really cool. Now, I have to go back to the very, very beginning, though, of what you said. You left that first company because they didn't want to be held accountable for SEO. What does that mean? Because I feel like that advice or whatever you're about to say is still relevant.
So I've worked with a number of different marketing firms and technology companies, and I was the in-house geek, right? The in-house web guy. And as I was in more and more marketing firms, I started to develop the SEO methodology that I was observing, and I was adopting this around 1999 or so, right before everything started to really get going, 2000, 2001. And as I was developing my method of how to optimize and how to get a site ranking on non-branded terms, I was bringing this methodology to the top stakeholders of companies and saying, look, we really need to be able to expand this service because this is where everything's going to be going. And these companies were traditional marketing firms, right? They would create collateral printed pieces and an entire series of company pieces, and the website was considered a piece of collateral. It was not considered an entire new lane of engagement with non-branded consumers. So as they started to realize what I was talking about, they also didn't want to be accountable. They were saying, what if it doesn't happen? What if it doesn't work? We're going to be held responsible that the clients invested in something that was not working for them. And I'm making the pitch going, look, you can see it. I can show you the digital side is a heck of a lot more clear to be able to report on than a postcard that you print and you hopefully get a 1.5 or 2.5% conversion of a return on that particular investment. And you don't know what actually stuck with users. You can do a lot of pivots, a lot of changes in digital and have that data right at your disposal. So it was the lack of embrace from traditional marketing that set me on the course to be able to create our own company, because they just didn't get it back then. That makes sense?
Oh, yeah. And it reminded me too of something that I heard about landing pages for PPC and then your regular landing pages on your website not being optimized. And the person I was talking to, she was talking to the PPC people in the past, where it was like, why wouldn't you optimize the website page as you saw these things were improving the conversions on this PPC landing page?
Absolutely. As you can steer terms, headlines, and adjust your landing pages to remove any type of cognitive dissonance that they're seeing the same thing that got them there. You can test audiences, you can test messaging. Why not get that into not only the digital space, but also let it permeate into the traditional print if you have those executions, because that's a test lab. That's a user testing environment right there.
Mm-hmm. And it's also interesting just to hear about the evolution of the website, because I've heard people say your website is not just your business card anymore. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it was a business card, but when you think of it as a piece of collateral, that makes sense. So it's interesting to make those connections. Now, the other thing you talked about was non-branded terms. Mm-hmm. So do you still believe in like non-branded terms having great power?
Absolutely. In fact, branded terms you can certainly secure, and you still have a messaging to do for those consumers that are brand loyalists and they're trying to find out more. And that is the digital business card space, and brand has moved away from website actually into your knowledge graph, things that Google's actually showing about your brand. So that's a whole nother conversation right there. But the non-branded traffic is incredibly important, especially as Google is getting in the way and answering a lot of simple questions with feature snippets, the people also ask factors, all of these different widgets that are inside of the SERP itself. It's taken away a lot of traffic that used to be destination traffic for websites. The 10 blue links were great, But now Google is scooping a lot of the more simpler queries and answering on its own turf, basically. So it's even more important to have good specialty terms, good knowledge on the website. If somebody's looking for a solution, they're not looking for your brand, right? They're looking for how to actually drill a hole. They're not even looking for the drill yet. They're looking for subject matter knowledge on how should I do this? And if you can provide that helpful information, then you have a heck of a lot greater opportunity to be able to convert them into a product sale as well as a brand loyalty build. The questions that people are asking, since it's being answered a lot by Google, you have to get even better information, better knowledge, because they're getting in the way of a lot of what we were counting on. There's your answer, but it's also more important that you go even deeper to understand consumer intent, because you have to be able to answer that, what Google can't answer on its own SERP.
Yeah. Okay. So just so you know, the people who listen to this podcast tend to be entrepreneurs who may or may not have a little bit of SEO knowledge trying to apply this to their own site. So real quick, could you define knowledge graph? Because I know that's a whole thing, but could you maybe give us your version?
Not a problem. So whenever you're looking up London Bridge, right, on the right-hand side, Google is actually showing, it's almost like it's a National Geographic panel. It's giving you an explanation of what London Bridge is, different references and pictures of that. It's a thing that Google understands, and it's presenting that thing in a way that you can see, learn from it. It's a piece of real estate on the Google right-hand rail that you're used to seeing. And if you're looking up any celebrities, the knowledge graph is there from the entity that Google understands and all the different spaces in which that entity lives. So you're talking about Britney Spears out there, or obviously Donald Trump or Joe Biden. Google understands those people and understands all the information that it can see, both in video, audio content on a website, images, and it's painting a picture for you of this is what I understand this person being. So this knowledge graph is a central place where Google has been demonstrating how much it knows about its universe of things. And as you see it more defined, that it really understands that space. So for your users who are entrepreneurs, the opportunity is whenever you see a specialty, a service that they do, and Google doesn't really have a clear picture of that service, in the right-hand panel or in the people also ask the widget that expands, if those answers aren't as correct as what you know about them, that's a perfect opportunity to be able to curate and expand knowledge on your website, share information, and educate Google. It will in turn look at you as a trustworthy source because you're feeding it information for it to understand its world around itself.
Hey, business enthusiasts, ready to boost your entrepreneurial journey? Tune in to the Growth Gear Podcast with Tim Jordan, presented by Carbon 6. Tim dives into cutting-edge business growth strategies and new brand insights. Whether you're a startup founder or a seasoned exec, gain the tools to elevate your business. Subscribe to the Growth Gear with Tim Jordan on your favorite podcast platform. Shift into high gear. The Growth Gear is your guide to fast-paced business success.
That's amazing. I always appreciate tactical advice because one of the things that I do on this podcast is follow through Fridays. And so I always try to take something that I learned from someone like yourself and apply it to my own website and kind of walk people through how I did that. So that's
absolutely
awesome.
What you're doing is very much in the same vein. You're actually unpacking something and connecting the dots, and Google can very well pick that up and understand the relationship of what you're doing. If I could, I pivot a little bit here. Because of what Google's learning, it's a convergence of a lot of things. What we've done here in the studio, we actually interview our clients, and we are not building podcasts for them. What we're doing is getting them in the studio and having 2.5 hour sessions where we're deep diving into their subject matter expertise, and we're guided by our own SEO research and our own knowledge of what Google doesn't know, and have this type of interview methodology where we unpack, we follow organically what that subject matter expert or SME it knows, and we can find their knowledge, their voice, their passion about what they know, And then while we're doing and recording all of that, we've got video, we've got audio, then we transcribe everything that we're learning from them. And then we're off to the races because we can curate that for social media content, for blogs, for podcasting, for structural content on a website, for images online. All of these things can help paint that subject matter expertise. So that's what we've developed organically, pun intended, from what we've been doing here on the podcast. We can now extract like core samplings, SME knowledge, and then curate that and use it for their marketing advantage.
Wow, that is so genius. I have this little thing that I made, like a little roadmap that I made. And the first thing that I have on the roadmap is like a user interview or a customer interview. You're
Right.
really going in depth. And one of the things I find hardest about writing content for other people is I understand the level of insight you have to really be able to differentiate yourself from a different business. And so I love that idea. That's an amazing tool to be able to really get into their brain and then understand their voice and understand their knowledge and be able to, like you said, find the gaps in the SERP where they can really stand out amongst other experts or other businesses.
Appreciate that. Here's a tool that helps really strategize that particular process. There's a platform called alsoasked.com, and it's a tool that you can actually put in any particular keyword or query. And what they do is they actually go through and scrape through all the PAAs, but not only 4 questions that come up that you usually see, but they'll actually go up to 4 levels and give you an entire brain kind of breakout. If you clicked on this answer, these would actually appear because Google positions the people also ask questions with certain type of intent, right? As soon as you click on one, all those others are oriented towards that intent, and then other questions come up based on that selection. You can go 4 deep, and then you can also get all the answers that are coming up from those PAs, and then you turn around and show that to your client going, do you know something better than what's actually showing right here in this answer? If so, there's your content strategy to be able to replace that with your own content.
So this choose your own adventure thing, if you have a question that you identify with on people also ask and you say, okay, I want to explore that further, is it better to write multiple articles about that? Or as you expand it, each piece of the expansion, does that belong in that same article?
Multiple content is good, but it needs to be supportive kind of nodes of relationships. So don't write 5 things about the paleo diet, just talking about paleo diet, and also write recipes for paleo diet, tracking sheets for paleo diet. Go around the subject matter and then write a supportive structure of kind of hub and spoke content. It's a cluster of information. That is the engram, the knowledge grouping that Google trusts if you are actually fully expanding the constellation of information around a thing.
Sometimes I get confused because it's cover it in depth, cover all the questions, but then it's okay, what point do you know that this question has been answered enough in this particular article and now it's time to move on?
Right. Don't put all your answers in one page because if you think about it, the user came in for a query and they could actually get a tome of information in front of them that they're not ready for. And Google themselves has said there's no character count that they look at. And it used to be that 1,000 words, what have you. But the fact of the matter, if you're helpful, if you're providing answers simply to people to help that customer's journey and also create, okay, if you're interested, here's another answer. If you're thinking about this as one more thing that you should know about and having this interlinking, very easy to navigate. Don't force them to go back up to the top navigation. Make it almost a story. Choose your own adventure. If you want this type of information, go here. Then you have a user journey built answer box, basically. And that's what Google's looking for, is not a tome of information on one page, because dilute the efficacy of one answer if you've got 15 on every page. But if you string them together of what's really important, and naturally, if the user looking for paleo diet, they're looking for how to get started. What's my shopping list? So give them a pathway to the shopping list. Don't answer that shopping list on that page. I don't know why I'm fixated on the paleo diet, but it's an example, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm seeing it visually in my mind then that maybe that also asks tree map is also something that actually lays out the user journey for you to get to that final question. I'm going to have to look at that because that's very interesting. And I want to compare it to some of the things that I've already written to see how well I've covered it and to see if I've missed some linking opportunities. So I thank you for that.
Yeah.
You were talking about linking. Now, there's this debate that links are not being valued as much by Google, but I want to talk specifically about the value of internal links. What do you think the impact of internal linking can be?
I think internal linking could very well eclipse external links coming from other authority websites, to be honest with you. Internal linking connects semantically related concepts together. And if it's in line in a content block and you link it not with a click here for more information, but you link it with anchor text, that's a valuable click. The user understands I'm about to go another page, but this furthers my query, just like we were talking about. And having that nested set of references as you're navigating is incredibly powerful because you are, again, connecting natural navigation of thoughts around subject matter, right? As opposed to a menu where you have all the things under the sun in your content. So the internal linking is pathway oriented based on the query as opposed to your entire ensemble of information. You're also connecting very quickly content that's the most relevant from a subject matter knowledge, and Google, the spider, does not go from the top down. They'll come in through a side window of your website and go one click deeper, and then it will stop. So if it comes in and starts munching on one page and sees non sequitur content one click away, it will still spider, but it's not understanding that there's relevancy someplace else because it came in, it spidered maybe 10 to 13 pages. If it sees relevant, related information on that entry point, it's coming back and understanding that you've got a pocket of information that's valuable for the consumer. So inline linking is not only a powerhouse, I think it is one of the best ways to communicate to Google the clusters of information that you've got and train it to come back again and again.
Yeah, I didn't know you were going to say that, but I'm so glad you did because I feel like entrepreneurs need to know what's going to have the biggest bang for their efforts, right? With the limited amount of time they have, if they're not hiring out this content process, or even if they do, like how to plan it so that it is going to be like the most efficient and the most effective. And you can't control what's happening outside your website. But I love to focus on the things that you can control. So you've just laid out so beautifully how you can do this with what you can control and how you can really improve your, ability to show up in search and for Google to understand all of those things just by what you're doing on your own website without having to worry about going out and getting links from other places.
In fact, that actually does earn you links at the same time, because if you have a well-organized hub of information, you're going to earn natural links because people are going to say, hey, there's a really great site that has organized a lot about paleo diet. They've got the recipes, they've got the shopping list, they've got these different things. Go here and learn more about that. You'll earn naturally those spaces of authority by keeping not only your garden well kept, but you're also going to give a lot of quick knowledge, but bookmarkable knowledge at the same time.
Yeah. Wow. Woo. So much there. I'm like, I love it when I talk to somebody. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do for my follow through Friday because there's so much good stuff here.
I appreciate it.
Okay. So going back to podcasting, is it playing a role right now in link building or like the future of SEO, the future of search?
Yes, absolutely. I get a bit biased, obviously, but Google parses through and can listen to your audio. Okay. It can understand what you're talking about.
Even without a transcript?
Absolutely. So
Wow.
It can actually learn and it can study what you're talking about. And if you're doing podcasts with chapters in them, it can actually understand what you're doing. There's what's called an ID3 tag inside of that data. You can guide Google and whatever platforms your podcast resides. The point is, if you're talking about something and you have a number of podcasts which Google can listen to, and a number of videos that came out of the same session, which, by the way, it will also train on, your content's getting digested in a lot of different ways. So if you think about it, You've got a podcast, you curate into a series of videos, snackable videos about one topic after one topic, then also curate that same content that resides on a show page or a series of blog pages with that same information. And you're housing that video on that blog page because the consumer is getting fed either their content or a quick video reel that they want to be able to play through. You're not only educating Google, but you're also pushing an omni-channel approach to all this. Google looks at any entity, a business or a service, through a lens almost like a mosaic, right? It's not just content on a page. It's the images, the videos that you put out, the podcasts that you put out, the live streams that you put out, the social that you put out, and it's constructing what it thinks, how much about the subject, right? And podcasts are a treasure trove because it's natural language processing. The machine learning grabs a hold of that. And as you're repeating certain things within your podcast, it'll actually understand the resonance of those things you're talking. Although Google Podcasts has died off, it understands and processes everything that you're putting out there digitally.
Okay, so a couple technical questions about that.
Yeah.
When you have your podcast, then is it better that you host it within your website versus, say, a platform like Buzzsprout or some sort of podcast hosting site? Does that matter?
It actually matters that you push it into different aggregators like Libsyn or Anchor or the other platforms that you have. Doesn't matter where it resides, as long as it does also reside on your website. So if you're pushing your audio content out, make sure you have a show notes page that has that player on that page as well, right?
Okay, so that's sufficient.
Right, absolutely. You don't have to self-host.
Okay, awesome. And then like with the video, I guess that's probably a similar answer. Does it matter if it's hosted on YouTube or
Actually, it does matter. Google gives some preference to its YouTube assets, and you'll get some video snippets in the SERP if you put structured data around that video that has data about that video in there. So there's a nice play to give you another search engine result asset that it will pull up. So you've seen the carousels, you've seen the video embeds on that SERP. That's what it's actually picking up from your own content, but it's got to be on your site.
So the structured data comes from something that you put on your site versus from the video itself.
It's actually a wrapper of code that you can manually put on your video page or other tools. There's plugins that can absolutely build that for you. And you can tap into a video element and put all the different factors of that video element, and it will render on that page along with the video itself. It's not tied right next to the video. It's in the header of the page, and it has all the information of that video object. So there's a lot of cool tools on WordPress. One's called Structured Data that actually is free. There's also a paid version, but that can actually, you can train it on, this is a video page and I've got this video, and then you just associate what type of structured data you want on that page, and then you can fill in all the gaps, all the fields on that, and immediately render.
Yeah. And I've heard Wix has some tools like that. I use Shopify primarily. Mm-hmm. So I never thought about going into the App Store, but there's probably something for that because I've seen some gaps on the content that Shopify actually with the structured data, or is data and schema, are they the same thing?
Structured data is the delivery tool. Schema's the principle, the concept. Schema's a organizational concept, and structured data is how it gets on the page.
Okay. Yeah. So I went to the schema.org page to test a couple of things, and it was saying that I had some blanks. It was missing some information. That's a great takeaway. So if you have a website builder that has apps, this might be a good time to go check and see if they have some sort of structured data type stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible. You're telegraphing a signal of what type of document this is. And that's one of the most basic things to do, is be able to tell Google, and it's actually a uniform code knowledge that all search engines got together and agreed upon. So if you think about it, if you want to give Google a topographical map, right, of your site, you've got some structural pages, service pages over here. You've got some FAQs over here. You've got articles over here. You've got an About Us page over here, a contact page over here. Tell Google in structured data what type of page this is, so you can give a topographical map of it so it doesn't have to figure it out. You're making it, it's almost like the Cliff Notes version of it, but you're making it easier for Google to understand the entire layout of your website. And then you can get into a lot of other cool things like, hey, this blog mentions this, and then you can reference a Wikipedia link, be able to give authority. I'm talking about this about paleo diet, right? And here's a reference to that. You can also use same as tags inside of your schema. Paleo diet is also known as possibly a keto diet, or not really, but there's a number of different terms for it. And you can reference, and Google's picking that up. It's not displayed on the page, but you can give nuance to what you're talking about, and Google can actually pick that up and start trusting you more because you're helping it's processing out to figure out what you're talking about.
Yeah. Whenever I hear somebody say the word nuance, it definitely gets my attention. I know some people might think, oh, this is a little bit too in depth and maybe nerdy, and I love nerdy. I would love this class.
It is not difficult.
But but I feel like that's where it should start. You know what I mean? Because we start from what we see on the outside. And then that's why it doesn't have any structure on the inside. So I wish there was some sort of resource that said, this is how you structure it. So then when you build it, it makes sense.
When you think about propaganda, you probably think about Kim Jong-un and his funny little haircut. And you'd be exactly right. The podcast, This is Propaganda, doesn't want you to believe that. They want you to question the ads you see, the news you read, the brands you love. What they don't want you to question is that they are advertisers themselves, peddling the same tricks they claim you fall for to make a living. If you need something to boycott, look no further than this show. Don't listen to This is Propaganda.
Yep. And with all of the web building tools like Wix and WordPress, and Wix is really exploding on better and better SEO tools, but it's all been graphic. It's all been user focused, right? Very easy to move stuff around, write content without understanding the machine side of things, right?
Yes.
You've got to write for the user, not for the machine, but you can help the machine along by interconnecting inline content between two pages, but also structured data around that. Once you get beyond kind of the first glance, wow, that's really code that I've never seen before. There are tools to help you, right? Once you get into that space of, oh, I can actually sculpt the things on this page to help Google understand, then you're off to the races because you have a whole nother thermal layer of additional information that Google's paying attention to.
So what are those tools?
Google has a schema builder, so you can actually go through. It's a free service that you can talk about what your page is about, and it will spit out fully validated, legitimate code that you can just cut and paste into your page. You have to have a particular area where you can put it. It's not going to be inline content, but you got to know that you have to have a code insert widget on your website so you can drop that code in there. But there are other tools like free and paid versions, WordPress tools, Rank Math is one, structured data is one, but there's also external tools. One of the ones that we use at our shop is Schema App. Schema App is a next level structured data sculpting tool where it renders on the page, but it's hosted someplace else. So we can actually make all the changes we want and not even have to touch the page. It will fire on the page as soon as it says, hey, I'm looking for this page. Oh yeah, this is all the schema on that. It'll immediately render. That means that we can actually do our library of things, really create that knowledge graph that drops onto that site, but we don't have to be at a page level because that manual labor is not efficient, right?
Yeah.
And we have this kind of layered effect where there's an entire thermal layer of structured data that immediately renders, but it gives us the ability to do a lot very quickly.
Okay, so the end result, how does that affect your ability to show up in search?
Sure. So when it gets down from an ROI standpoint, if you're effectively telling Google what type of documents you have, what you're talking about, and in keeping the information fresh in that structured data layer, you can see between a 25 and 40% increase in impressions of your website over time as it begins to trust you. So impressions lead with clicks, right? So you can actually get a higher ranking. You're going to be getting more traffic, eyeballs on you as in the search engine result page. If you do it effectively, and again, it's always that it depends. How much content do you have? How big your website is? How competitive the space is, right? But having that additional layer, you can increase impressions. We've seen one with an e-commerce website. We are increasing 80% impression share on every page that we put structured data on, some deep structured data, and we also increased the clicks to those pages by 50%. We were putting some smart goals for ourselves that every page collectively that we were putting out there, we were going to be hitting those goals of increasing 80%, 50% on clicks. And we actually blew through those goals by a factor of 3. We are increasing these impressions by 300% because if Google's looking at, okay, there's all this basic schema, and then here's one that's really valuable, it's going to lift all those pages up in their competitive terms. And it did just that.
Wow, that is so mind blowing. And then the other thing that stands out to me too is like when you think of acronyms like EEAT, the definition of trust is not fully understood until you understand like what Google values as trustworthy. Like this whole definition that you just gave us, you said this builds trust with Google. I didn't even know that existed. So how can I even build trust when I don't know it's there?
And trust is not a checklist item, right?
Right.
Trust is building more and more value on your website, more and more nuance. And it could be argued, I'm just giving away all this information. Google's going to get it from somebody else if it doesn't get it from you. And you could very well have some gated information that you want to keep it for user login, but that subject matter expertise will help fuel Google's trust. Now, Google just got done with a core algorithm update, and it was the longest core algorithm update. It focused on helpful content. It was removing content that was manipulative, right? Removing content that were link bait type of schemes there. And it started to pull in Reddit content. And we've all seen Reddit show up in the SERPs. You want to know why? Because that's helpful content inside of Reddit. The community's helping each other. They're not worried about search. They're talking to each other naturally. There's natural solutions, natural valuable information. And all of a sudden, Reddit has exploded in visibility because Google trusts those answers because it's not built for search engine optimization. It's built to help each other in that community.
Wow, that seems like it could be a whole nother episode in and of itself, which is awesome. But from the entrepreneur perspective, again, saying that, okay, I've got a limited amount of time to implement one thing today that you talked about that's going to have the greatest impact on driving business and sales. What would that piece of advice from you be? What should they do?
Don't go geek. Don't go that code route, although I'd love to say that would be the best thing. Have somebody interview you. Have somebody ask you questions about what you do, why you do what you do, right? And get into some subject matter knowledge. Don't look at SEO. Don't look at what keywords I should talk about. Just talk about what you do and the industry that you're in, how you differentiate, but don't make it a sales pitch. Make it a kind of exploratory, tell me more about this. How does this relate to this? And start building a script of how to unpack information, record it, transcribe it, look at it. And then from there, you can very well say, oh, I didn't talk about this. I'm going to add this in here. But then you have your own subject matter expertise that you can either give to your web developer, say, hey, how can I use this? Or you can even use this as the fodder. And I say this very carefully. You can also use AI with this information to build some content around a blog or what have you. And again, always shepherding that information. Never have AI just create it, but you can utilize it to get things moving through the system and then have multiple blogs, multiple pieces of information that you govern all the way through. But you can write at scale from that interview. That makes sense?
Yes. Yes, it does. That's crazy because it becomes your brand voice. And then you just mix all of the stuff together and it makes like a beautiful content cake.
And then link them all together inside the content. Then you've got a cluster that's coming right out of your brain to the site. And that's what Google is looking for. Helpful information.
Yes. I cannot wait to share this with my SEO group. We are so doing this together. Okay. Thank you for all of these little tips and tricks. I appreciate it. So if anybody wants to get in contact with you, either maybe hire your company or follow you, connect with you online, how can they do that?
Certainly. The podcast is over at edgeofthewebradio.com. And you can also search SEO podcast on Google. You'll be able to find us at the top. That's a pretty cool thing in its own right. Our company is sitestrategics.com. That's SITE, strategics.com. You can also find the media side of things at edgemedia.studio. But just Google us, and you can find me anywhere with Erin Sparks. Put an SEO after it because I'm battling my own knowledge graph with a scientist out of, I think, Vanderbilt or Vancouver that has my same name, Erin, and I'm trying really to pry that away from her. But she's got a lot of scientific journals that are giving her a lot more trust there. So I'm trying to wage that little war there. But you can find us in all the spaces on social, as well as just those URLs that I just.
Okay, I'll definitely link to them in the show notes. And
Cool.
wow, Erin, thank you. This was amazing. If you have a class on this at any point in the future, like I want to go.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it, Crystal. In fact, a couple of my colleagues here at the shop keep on prodding me to do something like that, and Gabe shaking his head right now. So maybe we might do that in the future. I appreciate that. Thanks for the affirmation. This has been a really good conversation for the day.
Yeah, awesome. How the internet really works. You know what I mean?
It's things, not strings of characters. Make sure that Google understands the things that you're talking about, and educate Google.
Yeah.
Educate your consumers, and then Google will come along. How about that?
That's perfect. So awesome. Thank you again. And thank you for listening. I will see you next week, and have a great day.
Take care.